I had them draw their name in graffiti. I showed them how to do their name in graffiti and color it in. And the headmaster came upstairs and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm teaching them to trust me."
Yeah.
And so after that, by the end of the first year, these kids were doing classical oil painting.
All right, Rita Berkowitz, thank you for coming in and talking with me today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. I think I was thinking about it this morning. I think we're at least 35 years I've known you and you and Dave, and maybe even longer.
Even longer, yeah. You were like 10.
Yeah. So, so I know a lot about you, but just so the audience can get a little bit of an introduction. You got your start in New York.
Yes.
And before the pastels in the sunsets or sunrises and other things that you work on now, I was really familiar with the large figure drawings, paintings. Sorry. Yeah. That I remember seeing in your house.
When you were a little kid.
Yeah, when I was a little kid, just on a large scale. But I think in our conversations, there's even more to it than that. You started in New York, and you were...
Well, I grew up in New York.
Yep.
So I was very blessed to have a junior high school teacher who said, "I want you to try to get into the High School of Art and Design." And so she sent me home, which you didn't get dismissed in the middle of the day back then.
Yeah.
And she sent me home at lunchtime, said, "Have your mother sign it, get it right back to me." Thank God my father was not at home that day, because he would have said no. I know that.
Yeah.
So I had my mother sign it. I ran back to school, and then I tried out for the High School of Art and Design. The day that I was there were 1,500 people trying out, because you had to do a test.
Yep.
So we had to do a perspective drawing, we had to do a figure drawing, we had to do all these different things. And in my class, ended up between the two tryouts, there were 400 kids that were accepted. I was one of them. And so I went to high school in Midtown Manhattan, which was so exciting. The teachers were all very professional. And we learned. I mean, you sat down, you had 4 hours of art every day.
Yep.
So it was an incredible thing to have. And then I went to Pratt Institute, and that was an amazing experience also. Pratt Institute in the 60s, you can only imagine.
Yep.
And then after that, when I moved up to Boston, I went to the museum school for a few years. And then my teacher that I had then said, "Who do you want to study with?" I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Just get yourself a studio and paint." Mm-hmm. And so the large paintings that you were talking about were of kids in Roxbury and Dorchester. And then I started off with the kids I was teaching, because I was teaching troubled teenagers.
Yep.
And then I went out to the streets, and I would go out and I would photograph people and I would paint them. And so that was those paintings. And then took a hiatus for about 14 years doing my other work.
Yep.
And then I came from there. We moved to Scituate. And again, all coincidental, the woman who was running the South Shore Arts Center at that time was my neighbor, who said, "Come to an opening." I picked up a brochure. The one day that I was free a week was the day was Donna Rossetti Bailey's class.
Yep.
Started me in the pastel community.
Was that Heather Collins, or who was the...
It was Candace, her name was.
Okay.
Heather was working there at the time, but Candace was like what Patrice is now.
The director.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so Candace invited me to come to the opening. I went to the opening. I picked up the brochure. There was Donna's class. I went in and said, the one day a week that I'm not working, which was Wednesday, was a 5-hour class. I had no idea what I was signing up for. It said Pastel Atelier. I had no idea what atelier meant, because I studied Spanish in school, not French.
Yeah.
And so I got into the classroom, didn't know if I was going to be drawing a ball and learning how to shade it. And she said, "Here, go pick a reference and start to paint." And I said, oh, okay. And I had no idea what I was doing with pastels at
Yep.
that time. So Donna was, and still is, a very important part of my life. And hence came this incredible pastel community,
Yeah.
which is, we are tight. I mean, it's not just that we paint together. We take care of each other. When somebody's got something going on, they're there. When, I've had situations in my life that I was dealing with some very difficult things.
Yep.
Those people were so there. So we not only paint together, it's
a community.
It's a community. It's a community. We
Yeah.
take care of each other.
I think that I know what you're referencing, and I know that there was a lot of people that wanted to be that were concerned for you, and that were supportive.
They're so supportive.
And,
so supportive.
And I think you saw that with the show for Lorinda that I think is just wrapping up at South Shore.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming down now.
Yeah, and it is such a strong community, and I think I credit Donna a lot for that.
It is Donna. It is Donna. Donna is. She's here for me.
Yep.
She's here. She has been there. During the pandemic, we would stand outside of my house, and we would stand 10 feet apart with our masks on, just so we could see each other. We would pass things to each other that we needed to do, but we always made sure to see each other during that time.
Well, I think you have so you look at Donna as like this, amazing teacher and,
amazing
artist
teacher
but
and even
just person,
such a dear friend.
And everybody wanted to, work with her. And I think there's other teachers that do the same, but I think to myself, why is this area so pastel heavy?
And it started with actually Liz Haywood Sullivan,
Yep.
and who is absolutely. I just saw her piece in Duxbury. I don't know if you've seen the show.
Yep.
I literally, my mouth dropped when I saw it. It was gorgeous. And I can't use the words that I usually say to people when I really love their paintings because we're doing a podcast. But, the artistic talent in this community, and not just pastel, the artistic community. I think of people like Jody. I think of people, that are Barb Jason, who started actually in the pastel class with me.
Oh, did she?
But she's acrylics now.
Yeah, I saw her in the students of Lorinda from the master class. And there was a few in there that they didn't work in pastels, and I think you told me it wasn't like everybody in there didn't.
The master class was not just pastels. Lorinda had us work in whatever media we wanted to.
Yep.
Sometimes she had us work in things we didn't want to, but 'cause she really pushed us. She really forced us to look at art a different way, learn to do compositions a different way, not just to settle on the reference photo and copy the reference photo, but how can we make it our own?
Yep.
I always think of when I took that class of when I watch a show like The Voice and they say, make it your own.
Yep.
And so Lorinda really forced us to make it our own. Like, what's a focal point that you really like? Okay, make the painting about that rather than the entire image in the reference.
Yep. It was interesting seeing that because not being in, sitting in that class, you don't know who took, who learned from her, and there was a bunch that I didn't realize that were in her class, but then you look at their pieces, especially in that show, and you can see her influence.
Yeah, you definitely can. And she was a tremendous influence on all of us. She freed us.
Yeah.
Which is a very nice thing for an artist to let go and to get free and to be able to really look at a piece that you're creating and say, what do I really want to say? What do I really want to do? I don't want to just copy photographs. It's I think beginning, and I'm going to be teaching beginning pastel this summer, and I'm hoping you're taking my class, Dave.
We'll see. I'll see what the schedule's like.
It's going to be 9 to 12 on Wednesdays from July
That might conflict with the podcast.
Okay.
But so where are you going to be teaching?
At the South Shore Art Center in
Nice.
Cohasset. And, I'm very excited. I taught art for a lot of years.
Yep.
And so to go back to it now, I go to bed at night thinking of what exercises can I give them? What can I do? How can I challenge them? How can I bring the best out of them if they're brand new? Because they're going to be beginner and intermediate. But, how can I bring the best out of students like this who maybe didn't have the background that I did?
Yeah. I know teaching's a big part of your history. And, you were saying when you were working with, like troubled youths or, people in tough situations, is that something you've always wanted to come back to? Or
the troubled youths are still in touch with me, so they're now in their 50s.
Yeah. I'm not knowing that. This is probably why you and Dave were so nice to me when I was younger.
We were used to
it. You had
it.
a background, yeah.
I had a background in dealing with nice juvenile delinquents, so I had no problem. No, you were easy compared to some of the boys that I was dealing with. But, they were very inspirational because they, firstly, when I went into the school and I was going to teach the first day, and I'm looking at all of these inner city boys who were in a middle school level, but they're 17 and 18 because they had been in trouble that much. And so I said, how can I get connected to them? Because I know as an art teacher, especially with kids like that, you have to really get them to trust you.
Yeah.
And so I had them draw their name in graffiti. I showed them how to do their name in graffiti and color it in. And the headmaster came upstairs and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm teaching them to trust me."
Yep.
And so after that, by the end of the first year, these kids were doing classical oil painting. So if I could take them from one to the other, it's for working with kids like that, it was a matter of getting them to think that I wasn't afraid.
Yep.
That was a big one because, again, these are big guys that I was working with, that I wasn't afraid of them, that I wasn't going to be shocked by what they did. And then, okay, one time one kid do something that was probably inappropriate for school. And I went up to him and I said, if you ever want to look at other work like this, go to the library and look up Indian erotic art.
Yep.
And so, the headmaster came running up when he heard that this kid had drawn this picture. What's going on here? And I told him how I handled it, and he said, "That's perfect."
Yep.
So, again, instead of being like, "What are you doing to this kid?" I said, "Okay, if this is what you're interested in, let's further your education in it."
Yep.
And so he did. And so, if you can lead kids to want to learn, if you could lead them to go to a library, if you could lead them to try to do work that they had never done before.
Yep.
And then what I would do is I would bring in, like, these old soft-covered books of master paintings. You've probably seen them. They used to sell them on television, 100 master paintings. So I would cut the book up, and I would give the kids a master painting, and I said, "Now you can do this." And so I would show them step by step how to do this. And it's strangely enough, one called me from jail and asked me if I still had his paintings. Okay.
So you're
after
still
he graduated.
So what are we thinking, about 40 years later, or?
I was there from 1984 to 1990, so it's yeah.
And you're still in contact.
I'm
with
still in
some
contact with some of them.
Yeah. And any successful artists out of the group?
Well, I can't. Hard to say, Dave. Sent me art from jail.
Yeah, well, they're still producing.
So they were still producing. Now they're actually working. They're sober. They're employed, and they're housed.
Yep.
And so, considering from whence they came,
Yep.
the fact that they had this, and the fact that they still want to talk.
Yep. I mean, that must be very rewarding in a
Very
sense.
rewarding,
And
yeah.
to know what, how you touch them and.
And so you've seen paintings of them.
Yeah.
And
no, I remember that, and as a, 13, 14-year-old kid, being in the house, seeing those large scale paintings, it was confusing, but now getting an understanding, and I think I have for a while, but it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. So anyhow, those kids started, and then I would hit the streets of Dorchester and Roxbury, and and I had my studio in the South End at that time, so folks were there, and so I used to go out with my cameras, and people would say to me, "You're not safe doing this." I said, "I'm safe.
Yep.
I know. I surround myself with white light before I go, and I'm totally safe."
Yeah.
And I never had a problem. Never once did I have a problem. They said, "You're carrying all this expensive camera equipment," because we didn't have cell phones then to do it.
It was
a different era. So I had all my camera equipment, slung over my shoulders, and I would walk the streets until I saw somebody that I thought was an interesting character, and I'd say, "Hey, I'm an artist." I would chat with them usually for 10, 15 minutes before I would photograph them. So there was a rapport that I would catch. So it wasn't a cold photograph.
So when you did the paintings from those photographs of the people, knowing their background and their story a little bit, did that help?
Oh, absolutely, because you got the personality.
Yep.
And so getting the personality of them was fabulous.
Yep. That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the, it seems like you've taught all sorts of things too, right? Color theory, figure drawing.
Yep.
Did you have a fashion background also?
I did have a fashion background. I studied, I was in fashion design at Pratt Institute. And then from there, when I moved up to Boston, I went immediately to teach in the School of Fashion Design. So. And they, and I taught fashion illustration and fashion design, and
that makes sense. You're a fashionable.
I do like the clothes. I do have a thing for the clothes. Yes.
So you went on to teach that too.
I went on to teach that, and then when I was, I was about 29. I went to the museum school while I was teaching there, and so I was balancing the two between doing the fashion design there and then doing the fine arts. So, and as I said, when I was in school, Jerry Bergstein was the teacher, and he was saying to me, "Go get a studio."
Yep.
And I did, and it was the most wonderful thing to be in an arts community for the first time of, other than school, being in an arts community, to be able to critique each other, to be able to say, hey, hey, I'm working on this, is there something you're seeing that I'm not? And that's probably one of the most exciting parts about being in the arts community, is that you can do that. You can say, hey, take a look, and Donna and I, and Maureen Spinelli, who I know you know also, would do that. We would, during winter storms, we would do, and that was the very beginning of cell phones, we would do class together while we were stuck in our homes. So we would send the pictures of what we were working on to each other to say, okay, are you seeing anything? So we still did our group of painters working together, but it was via phone because it was a storm and we couldn't get out.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I think that community is important, and then you still have that sense of community over
Absolutely.
in Rockland.
Rockland's a little different. Rockland
studio space.
The studio space I have. I love the studio space I have. I'm working with Marie Peters, who I absolutely adore, and I know you know her also. And again, we have that same thing. I paint with a group at Donna's on Monday. I paint with Marie every other day.
Yep.
People say to me, how much time do you spend in the studio? I'm painting usually 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. So
it's like a full-time job.
I'm a full-time. That's my job. That's pretty much my job. Yeah.
And then you're out framing it and promoting it.
And then I'm out. Then I come right here. I did something I like. I'm running over to the frame center to see what you or Dina says I should put on my painting.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're you're painting a lot there, but do you find more of the community from your pastel group, or do you
more
do
the
you
community
roam the
is the
halls
pastel.
over in the
We roam the halls, but it's not like, I paint during the day.
Yep.
A lot of people paint in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't always see everybody. There's some new artisans that have moved in.
Yep.
There's somebody that is a felter. There's somebody that's making essential oils and
Yep.
doing things with that. So it's not just the painters. So there was a big outflux and influx over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So, Maria and I are standing looking and say, who are these new people and what are they about? And, and
Well, it's a nice. When is the fourth floor? Is that
the open
coming?
studios. So we have the open studios is both the Wright Building and the Sandpaper Factory.
Yep.
Although we advertise separately right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be April 26th and 27th.
Yep.
And the studios will be open for the public to come in and see and look at all the wonderful paintings and sculptures and jewelry and
Essential
oils
Yep.
and felted things. I'm very fascinated to see what she's going to do because she was just moving in, the last couple of weeks. So I haven't seen her work yet. I've just seen her bring boxes in and stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's always fun. I mean, and are you there both days? Just kind of.
This year, for the spring one, I'm going to be there just on the 27th because I'm teaching on the 26th.
Okay.
And that was planned months and months ago. So
Yeah. Well, Marie will be holding down the fort.
Marie's going to be holding down the fort, and anybody who wants to buy anything, she's going to take their name for me. So
Well, that's good. I mean, I think that. I like going to those open studios and just I think it's interesting to see where artists work too. So like getting a little bit behind the scenes and seeing stuff in progress.
Yeah, and seeing the thing that I find fascinating is when people come in to see they look at the pastel table.
Yep.
I have two sides of my studio where the pastels are laid out, so
Yep.
I don't have to open boxes when I'm painting, and so they're all there, and I can, I say, where is the exact color blue that's coming into my mind, and then I go through all of the blues that I have until I find exactly what I want to do to create the colors that I want to create.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I would encourage people to get over there and check that out, to come visit you and see some of your works and just see all the other artists that are over there. I think sometimes too, I mean, how many paintings do you produce before you actually like frame one and show, enter it into a show? Probably a lot, right?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and lately I've been doing something which to me, because in the master's class, after we lost Lorinda, we had some incredible people come in to teach us. Alison Kryjak, who you may know her work, I don't know. She won first place in pastel for the last 2 years at Duxbury.
Okay.
So that lets you know her level.
Yep.
And she came to teach us things on color theory that even though I taught color theory, she had more.
Yep.
And so I call them my resurrections because I've taken a lot of paintings out of my flat file and said, now that I have this concept, where can this painting go?
Yep.
And so I've been reworking a lot of the paintings, and I'm absolutely thrilled with what's been happening.
That's good to hang on to them, right?
Oh, you do hang. You don't. Well, I had the ones that I didn't hang on to.
Yeah.
They went down the hall.
Yeah.
Okay, to the nice place where we dispose of what we don't like anymore. Then I had the ones that I was going to rework, that's what I've been working on now. And then the ones that I said, wow, these are great. And then I bring them over to you to frame.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, I think that it's a good thing to go to those studios too and see them, before you've invested in framing them too. People might be able to get a deal.
They sometimes can, yeah.
But yeah, I think that it, and then there's also the, who knows how you feel about a certain piece, but somebody else might see it.
Always blows me away. Always blows me away. It's like you can do a painting that you love, you enter it into a couple of shows, and you get that nice little "I'm sorry" letter and email now, or you can have something that you think, okay, especially after a while when you've produced more and your work has evolved, you look back at some of the older pieces, and then somebody comes in and says, oh, I love this. And so they go ahead and
I think as an artist and as like an individual too, right? Sometimes you are overly critical of your own stuff.
We're always the toughest.
And sometimes it's the mistakes that
that you learn from.
Yeah, but there are also sometimes it's a mistake when you're putting a line down or something that might be what somebody
like Bob Ross says, those happy little mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. It all works out. Yeah. So the teaching, so you were teaching children, you're teaching people about
I was teaching
your other
teenagers.
industry.
I never did little kids.
No, never little
only
kids.
My own. Those are the only, and when friends came over and we'd do an art project, the youngest people that I taught was 12.
12. And then you were teaching at some colleges too?
Yeah, I taught at Bradford College. I taught at Fitchburg State, Framingham State, School of Fashion Design. I taught at...
I saw the Worcester Art Museum.
Worcester Art Museum, thank you.
Which was interesting, too, because Claude shows there, because he's from Worcester.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Claudio, our famous social media guru here at the
He
Print
is.
Center.
He's wonderful, yeah.
He's had I think he might be working on another project over there, too. So.
And one of the most wonderful things that happened when I was teaching at the Worcester Art Museum, they had a faculty exhibit, and somebody had brought in their class to see the museum.
Yep.
And I just happened to be walking by when there was a little African-American boy who pointed up and said, I've never seen a picture of us before.
Really?
And then he called his friends over, and there were 3 little boys looking at this picture of the guy's name was Charlie. I don't remember what I titled the picture, but the guy's name was Charlie, and Charlie always said, Rita, as long as you're here, I'm protecting you. And then he showed me the knife in his, a knife holster in his leg, And so I always felt so safe there. But to see that these kids were so moved by seeing, as we hear on the news so many times now, somebody who looks like me. And so that was very profound for me. But that series was called City Folk. And so I would go all around the streets and I would be photographing the kids and the adults and old people.
And then, during your hiatus when you were working on your other career, you were also teaching people about contacting spirits?
Yes, I still do. I still do.
You're still...
I'm still doing that. Right now I'm teaching at a place called Women of Wisdom in Easton.
Okay.
And she has the schools of wisdom, so I teach the school of mediumship. So there are 3 levels for those people who want to go that far. And the group I have now in my advanced class is blowing me away. I mean, they are so gifted and so talented. And when I see the work that they can do, and they just go ahead and do it, and they're approaching it like professionals, not like, people who say, oh, well, I want to see if I can talk to dead people. But last class we had to do an assignment where they had to create an exercise to bring the best out of a class. And so they came in like, they presented it like professional teachers would. Sometimes even more than what I've seen professional teachers do. And so I was thrilled with what they do.
Did you see much in the way you teach people how to contact spirits and how to put pastel on a piece of canvas? Is there a similarity?
Get out of your way.
Get
out of your own way. Stop going into your head. Both creating art and doing mediumship is a right brain situation.
Okay.
When you analyze, when you start to think, I said it in my painting classes and I say it in my mediumship classes, No thinking aloud in my class. If you go into your left brain, you're going to stop creating. And so you don't want that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, go ahead.
The spirit work, that's all on your website too, or is it?
Yeah.
Or are there two different?
No, we changed the name of the website because I'm doing more of this now than I am doing the spirit work. I'm supposed to be retired, but that never quite happens.
Yeah.
So but they can. It's posted. I put it out there on social media, and anything that I'm doing or where I'm going and where I'm going to be presenting is all out on social media.
So you have two different groups of followers?
Two different groups of followers, absolutely, yes.
Yep.
And people are always shocked to find out about the other one.
Really?
You know, whether it's my mediumship students finding out about the art or the art students finding out about the mediumship, or people in the arts community finding out about the mediumship. I think now, because I've been in it long enough that most people know who I am and what I do.
Yep.
But at the beginning, you know, there were people when I first came to Donna's class way back when, there were people that were afraid of me. Yeah. Oh, she does what? Oh, gets get away from her. Yeah. You know, so, but after a while, you know, when somebody was hurting and I would do a healing on them and all of a sudden their sprained finger wasn't hurting anymore, you know, and it's just a matter of a transference of energy. It's not any weird thing that only I can do. But I would do stuff like that or, you know.
Is that like a Reiki type of?
Similar to a Reiki, yeah, exactly.
Nice.
So, yeah, I am a Reiki master also. So, but it's, oh, God, all the things I've done. So, you know, in doing a healing on somebody, you know, that to me is one of the most joyous things. And my granddaughter just had her 16th birthday, and she said to me after I gave her a birthday present, which she was very thrilled with, she says to me, "So how about a birthday healing, Grammy?" And when your grandchildren ask you for a healing, that's like, wow.
Yeah, did it work?
It did, yeah. She always feels better.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's scary that it's 16. A 16th birthday for a grandchild. Yeah.
Yes. How did that happen?
I feel like
How did that happen?
I feel like I'm 16.
You still feel like 16, and how old is your daughter now?
Yeah, 15. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, well, I think that the pastel class, all that information is through South Shore and
that'll be coming out soon. It's not on my website yet, and I'm waiting for them to come out with where people can sign up before I start publicizing it. But I'm sure it will be out soon for the summer classes.
Nice. And you said you had an event coming up with from the Spirit World.
Yes, Laurie Sheridan and I don't know. You might know Laurie Sheridan.
The name doesn't. I know a lot of people by face.
Her husband manages Tinks.
Okay.
So you might know it that way.
I've been out of that world for a while.
Chris Sheridan. But anyhow, she was a student of mine. And now the students I have in the advanced class, half of them were her students. So I'm now becoming the grandmama of mediumship classes, but so she and I are going to be doing it together, and it's just a joy to work with her because what we do when we work together, and sometimes we work with Laura Worcester also. We just recently worked with John Holland. So people from the woo-woo community know who these are, but I don't know if you do. No. But anyhow, I'll do my spirit drawings, and then she does just straight mediumship, so she will do it, and then the two of us link in together. So there is a way, it's called linking into the link. So I'll start sketching, and then she'll start talking about the communicator, and then I'll start talking about the communicator, meaning the person coming in from spirit, and then there it is.
Yep.
You know, and so then we turn to the audience and says, who does this lovely person belong to?
Yep.
And our hope is just one person raises their hand.
Yep.
And they're usually like, you know, when they see it.
Yeah, to those who don't know about that aspect of your career, you kind of blended the two worlds, and you actually sketch people when you're doing these. I don't know if they're called readings or
spirit drawings.
Spirit drawings.
Yes, spirit drawings.
So that's kind of a unique skill set that.
It's a very unique. Very few people do that.
Yep.
And I again was lucky enough to have somebody push me into it. This was not anything I had planned for my life. At the time when I found out that I could do this, because somebody basically annoyed me enough, so I finally sat down and did it.
Yeah.
When I did it and I saw that I had done 3 drawings for her class, and one was a Native American man, which was a spirit guide, which for me is no big whoop because it does improve continuity of life. The second one was a middle-aged man. The third was an adolescent boy. After I drew the adolescent boy, the man took a photograph out of his wallet, laid it down next to the drawing, and they matched.
Yeah.
And at that point, I got scared to death.
Yeah.
Because I knew my life was never going to be the same. You can't see something like that. And honestly, Dave, when I did that, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yep.
I just did it. I just jumped in feet first. But that's Rita.
Yeah.
So I did it, and then I looked over at the person I drew the middle-aged man for, and that woman was crying and said, "That's my father that you just drew."
Yep.
And I said, "My life is about to change."
Yep.
So it did. Really cleaned up my act because I realized they're all watching. So, so you can't get away with anything anymore when you know stuff like that. And, changed my life, became spiritualist minister. So I have that too. Ran a spiritualist church for 17 years, which I'm now supposed to be retired from. But I'm still assisting and doing fundraisers for them and so on.
Nice. Well, it seems like
I've got a full life.
You've got a full life. You got a lot going on. You're an interesting person, interesting artist, and and it's interesting to think about the people that know you from one world and the other. Being one that knows you from both. Yeah. People you paint with, do you end up getting a lot of requests to contact people?
Actually not. I've given a couple of gift certificates for birthday presents. Yeah. Only a couple, very few of them have been used. Yeah. I think.
Well, maybe that world is scary to some too, right?
I think it is scary to some people. Some people say they don't want to know the future. And it's not about predicting the future. It's about proving continuity of life. And so, the predicting of the future kind of thing, if I have your grandmother here and your grandmother is saying, go to the doctor because you really need to get something checked out. Yep. So we're not allowed to prescribe or diagnose, but I can say, I'm feeling a pressure here. Yep. Go get it checked out. And the number of times where people called me afterwards and said, "Oh my God, thank you so much," because they found something that needed taking care of, and I just thought I was having some problems, but didn't think it was anything serious. And and other times I've said to people, "No, your husband is not cheating on you, so stop blaming him." And so and then they come back to me 5 years later. "You were right, and I went back to him, and we're happy now, and I'm so happy I listened to you." So you have that kind of thing that goes on, and
that's got to be rewarding too.
Very
like
rewarding.
Teaching and giving people advice.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of people that you aside from the drawings that you're doing for or sketches that you're doing when you're contacting? Did people from that world kind of transfer over and see your pastels?
Somebody came last week and they came for a reading and bought a painting right off the wall in my studio. Yep. So it's
I think that in that case I would imagine that the people see the artwork and they know you and they have that connection with you, and it must make the pieces that much more special
for them. Yeah. And there's I had a show at the senior center in Situate. Yep. And then somebody from my yoga class came to Open Studios, and then last fall, and then I had the show at the same time, and then she came to Open Studios and she purchased a piece. Yeah. So, and that was actually oils. So, the two worlds can come together, but it's not the purpose of it. I have people that are spiritual friends of mine that come to open studios and may buy some pieces.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, no, well, it's good to to weave the two worlds together,
Definitely.
I have people I play hockey with that come in and buy frames,
Hey, that's good. That's good.
It's important to, and it has to do with you as an individual, and and I think that somebody might want to have a piece of yours because they know you, and and then they want to come over and
it's very
look at them and find the one they love.
A million years ago, when I first started studying mediumship, and I had a good friend who was known as a psychic medium out on the Cape at that time, and she gave me a reading, and she said, people are going to buy your paintings not just because they're good paintings, but because you did them.
Yeah.
And they want some of that energy
Yeah.
in their home. However they want to, thank you very much. I'm very thrilled that happens. If they want to buy it because they want a piece of me,
Yep.
or they want a piece because they like the piece, whichever it happens to be, God bless them.
Yeah.
I'm happy to sell anybody any piece that they want to buy.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because you never know what is the factor that connects a person with the piece of art that they want to buy. I mean, I think about that all the time, and to try to get people to connect with art more often so that they buy art and have a piece of yours hanging on somebody's wall is more meaningful because they either know you, they love the piece, whatever the connection is, or they feel like it's giving off energy.
Yes.
Yeah. But that story is so much more compelling and interesting than, I bought this because it matches the couch.
I bought this because it matches the couch.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or
I
saw this at Home Goods and really loved it.
And also to say to somebody that the frame goes with the painting, not necessarily with your furniture.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that's an interesting thing that I've had to say a few times, that I'm more concerned about how the frame looks on the particular painting than I am to have it, you have cherry wood in your dining room, so you want cherry wood on the frame.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
No,
I think
it doesn't make
people
sense.
are starting in the wrong place. I think that maybe they should be starting with the art and what they're surrounding themselves with, and then
match the couch to go with it, which is what I've done in my life. So, yes.
Well, I think that that's the move. When we figure, we'll have a powwow on that and figure out how to convince the public of it. I appreciate you coming in. I find you to always to be even more interesting every time I talk with you, Rita, and I'd encourage people
you know how much you're here in my life, Dave.
Oh,
you know that.
I appreciate that. I had a nice conversation with Dave at Lorinda's show too, and having them, the folks at South Shore, say some nice words about me when I was there because of my part of the show.
You really did a great job putting the show
important,
together.
But that felt good. But I think that one of the things that really felt good was having a conversation with Dave and then knowing that he heard that those same words based on our conversation earlier. That's important.
Yeah, it is.
Always excited to see you.
He thinks you're pretty special too. So
well, you're special to me, and I always get excited when I see you. I hope that some people tune in and they get to hear a little bit more about you, and maybe they'll buy some more paintings.
Okay, thank you so much for having me, Dave.
My pleasure.
Okay.